Okay, well, I'd just like to welcome you all formally. I'm Liz Millman from Learning Links International. My colleague from Links International, Caroline Sansom, is also here. So we're based up in North Wales. Normally, Caroline is in North Wales. I'm in the outskirts of Melbourne, Australia at the moment. So it's pretty late in the evening for me here. But we'll be joined later on by Yasser Safari, who we've worked with for many years now. He's the director of the Jamaica Poetry Festival, and he'll be joining us from Jamaica, where it's ridiculously early in the morning. So he probably won't make it until probably about 1 o'clock your time. Okay, so first of all, it's great to have a representative from the Newtown Textile Museum. That's really good. Thank you very much indeed for being here. That's Maya. And wonderful that we've got a number of you from, and if I pronounce it wrong, I apologise, Lentwadine Historical Society. Lentwadine Historical Society. I should have been giving a talk to you on Thursday of this week, and I was really looking forward to driving down and spending some time and having the opportunity to have a look around, because I was born and brought up in Worcestershire, so coming down that way would be good, would have been good. But I decided to invite you to the Zoom session to at least hear about our project, and when things are better, then I'll come down your way again. Right, so also big welcome to all the community research volunteers and advisors who took part in a very exciting project last year called From Sheep to Sugar, or Woolen is Sugar. So that was good, and we're going to be making a start to tell you about that and show the film. This is actually the first time that the film has ever formally been shown, the film that was made of the project. And that takes about 10 minutes. So that's how we're doing our presentation. It's great also to have Gwyneth Kensler here. I think Norbert's joining us, and that's to follow on our conversations about David Livingstone and Henry Morton Stanley. It's also great to have Fikela Jean Samuel here. He's supported us for 4 sessions during Black History Month, sharing his wonderful paintings. And then we're going to invite Fikela back each month to tell us how he's getting on and to contribute to the sessions. So it's also good to be working with Belong Nottingham, who, like Learning Links International, have done 2, I think now, community research projects. The first one was about George Africanus and his story. And the second one was about the story of the Africans who brought the body of David Livingstone back to the UK. I have to say, I found my book Scramble for Africa today and read up about that in there, Simon. Was that a big resource for you?
Yes, it was. We looked at that. We looked at many publications, including some primary resources, including the diary of Jacob Wainwright, who was one of the Africans who worked with David Livingstone and helped bring his body back to the UK, and travelled and stayed in Nottingham. There is the connection with the work that Jose is doing with bark cloth, because Jacob Wainwright carried a piece of bark cloth with him. So we know that that cloth is a traditional African fibre. That's probably of interest to the lady from the Textile Museum as well. So there's a lot more to explore. So Belong is an organization founded by African refugees from the Democratic Republic of Congo initially, that supports people settling in Nottingham, both with skills such as employability and English, but also through exploring common heritage. We look at how people can find roots and develop connections. So we're looking in future to continue working with Wainwright's diary, which only came to us in full through German and French. And because a lot of our volunteers are francophone, we're going to be working on a translation and commentary next year, hopefully, all being well.
Right. Well, thank you very much indeed. That's great. So just to say that next week, David Alston's going to be talking about the Highlands and slavery. And it's really interesting that these conversations are going on between people in Wales, England and Scotland and other parts of the world. Last week, we were joined by Professor Sati from Jos University in Nigeria. So we're certainly getting a wide spread of interest. In order to keep in touch with people, we're going to put names of people, if they're okay with that, onto our more confidential mailing system, which goes through Membership Mojo. You won't be expected to pay anything, but you will receive the invitation each week through Membership Mojo, and that might be a good way to remind everybody as we build up a following for the conversations, because we intend to keep going, because it's so good to be able to meet people, and it's a time when we can't go out to meetings, so we're getting used to Zoom meetings. So that's getting us started, I think. So we're looking forward to that next week, David. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to ask Simon if he will share the screen with me so that I can do a screen share. Is that all right? Because I'm going to show you, first of all, the website, and then that belongs particularly, it's been created for the Black History Lunchtime conversations. And then we'll go into the film to tell you about this very exciting Heritage Lottery funded project that took place in the summer of, well, during 2019. So is it possible to do that, Simon?
Yeah, you should be able to just click on the share screen button.
Okay, right, and here we are. Right, well, isn't that good? Okay, so you see my screen. I click on here, which is my shortcut, and here's the now, if you've got all our faces down the side of your screen like I have, but I don't know how many of you using phones and how it looks then, you can press on the little button and then that takes it to a smaller size. Anyway, this is the project website. The project website has got all sorts of information about how we got on. It's got the final report. It's got a research findings site, which is still work in progress. It's got the Welsh version of the site, which again is work in progress, because every time we change the English site, we have to make sure we're changing that, and we're a little bit behind on that. But this was the crowd of us at the launch of the project. We did get Heritage Lottery funding for it, which we were delighted by, and it's really good to see advisors there, colleagues there, and Natalie, myself and Caroline representing the Learning Links International team. Okay, so I'm just scrolling down a little bit, because then you come to a part where there are lots of click here so that you can look at all kinds of different things. So we're going to start by having a look at the film that was made about the project. It's about 10 minutes. We have got a Welsh version. We have got an English version. And there's also another short film which was made by Professor Chris Evans. He's going to come and speak to us later in November, so that'll be an interesting one as well. But you can see the talk that he gave at the launch of the project, and then it goes on to explain how we introduce the story. This website is mainly about the project and the story of the project. We're thinking that it might be an idea to have a website just about the story, of Welsh plains and its links with the slave trade, rather than so much about the project. But we had to have a website in order to manage the project, so this is that site. Okay then, so if it's all right, I'm going to click here, and if miracles happen, we'll now we'll now see the here we are, you see, real live stuff this. Okay, so we thank the Heritage Lottery Fund, and then I'm not going to say anything else for 10 minutes because the film starts. So enjoy.
The mountains of North Wales, striking and magnificent. This land is steeped in history, from romantic medieval princes to the struggles of quarrymen and miners as they extracted slate and metal ores.
Liz, because you muted yourself, we can't hear you anymore.
Yeah, that's fine.
Find out more about this difficult story. The history of the Welsh woolen industry has been explored for years, and through this, we now know how vital it was to the economy of Wales. At one point, it was the country's biggest export. Recent research, however, carried out by academics and historians, has shocked many as it identified that one of the principal markets for the Welsh cloth from the 17th century to the 19th was the slave trade. Britain was involved in slavery for some 300 years, and it all revolved around the triangular trade. Slave raiders captured men, women, and children, marching them to the shores of West Africa, where they were exchanged for European raw materials and manufactured goods. The African slave traders wanted things such as guns, copper, cowrie shells, and many types of fabric. And one of these was a rough woolen cloth from North Wales called Welsh Plains. The captives were then forced to board sailing ships and were taken across the Atlantic to a harsh and short life of enslavement in the Americas. During the time of slavery, around 12 million Africans were ripped from their homes and enslaved in the New World. After arriving in the Americas, the enslaved would be sold to the highest bidder at auction before being forced to work on plantations, most of them in the Caribbean producing sugar or producing cotton in North America. By law, slave owners were forced to clothe their workers. Most of them wore a hard-wearing linen called osnaburg, which was made in several places across Europe. But another fabric that was brought over from Britain in huge quantities for clothing the enslaved was Welsh Plains. The history of Welsh cloth production goes back centuries and involved all parts of the country at different periods. By the time of slavery, the dominant wool-producing areas stretched across mid and North Wales through the old counties of Meirionnydd, Montgomery, and Denbigh. The production of woolen cloth involves many different processes and skills. First, the shearing, then sorting, followed by carding to remove thorns and barbs and to smooth out the fibers. Skilled spinners produce the yarn from the carded wool. Weavers set up their looms with the yarn ready to begin the arduous task of weaving the cloth. Much of Welsh Plains was woven in simple cottages or in farmhouses, which were dotted around the hillsides. After weaving, the cloth was taken to the fulling mill for cleaning, a process that involved fuller's earth, soap water, and urine, which helped bleach the cloth. After all that, the woven cloth was taken by long trains of pack horses eastwards across Wales to be sold to traders in the border markets, with the centre of trade being Shrewsbury. From about 1750, merchants from Liverpool traded directly with the Welsh weavers, ensuring that Welsh Plains made its way straight to the docks for export to Africa and the Americas. While we knew this history, what was missing from our knowledge was how this trade impacted on local communities in Wales then and now. That is what the Sheep to Sugar project possible and in many of the places that were directly connected to this story. To launch the project, the team met in Shrewsbury, once the stronghold of cloth trading through the all-powerful Drapers Guild. In fact, they held their first meeting in the former guild's prestigious hall, now a boutique hotel and restaurant.
This is the Drapers Hall. We have to remember, and we're here because that's the starting point to our story. We know quite a lot, thanks to the good records of the Drapers Guild. We know quite a lot about this history, and so it seemed a suitable place.
This has been a wool trading area because we are in an area called the Marches, the Welsh Borderlands, and the wool here is brilliant. It grows really well and the sheep grow well. The hall itself was as a result of the trading of wool. The Drapers were the original wool traders in about the 12th century. They emerged as part of the merchant guild of the town, and then a little bit later emerged into form a separate guild. So the merchant guild looked after all the trades, and eventually the crown realised it would get boring if they set up the guilds.
I'm Chris Evans. I work at University of South Wales, and here I am outside Sailors Institute of Barmouth. Why Barmouth? Well, because Barmouth is a port through which Welsh planes are exported out into the wider Atlantic world. So it's really important if you're looking at the history of Welsh ports.
It's absolutely fantastic. Handwritten record of shipbuilding from 1754 through to the 1800s, and we'll just go ahead to one of the pages, which is about the exports, showing the quantities of webs exported from 1789 through to 1794, and the peak was 276,612 yards. And then suddenly, now tell us why did it suddenly decline in 1793?
1793, January 1793, war breaks out between Britain and France. So that absolutely devastates international trade. So yeah, off a cliff.
Yeah. It explains really that the webs are made of coarse woolen cloth and cotton, it says, which is interesting. Yeah, I think so. It was the cottoning was the process that fluffed the surface.
While some Welsh wool was exported from Barmouth, one of the main locations for its manufacture was Dolgellau. The group are finding out about the town's former fulling mills, now little more than ruins. Now they're exploring the built heritage of the slave trade in the town itself, its old weaving lofts and mills.
Farmers would bring the wool up in large sacks. It would then be pulled up on pulleys, probably through there, and then the process would begin. And then the cloths would then be brought down as well.
Jill from South Wales has actually, from Ryland fleece, gone through all the processes to produce what could be Welsh plains, and she went through this fulling process. So in the photographs it shows the woven fabric being much lighter, and the fulling process really thickening it up. It's got the features that we've read about. It's got the texture that we think that Welsh plains might have. So this is really something quite special. We've certainly got a lot of information, and we've talked to so many people, as you've said. Our community research volunteers are constantly coming up with new gems of information, like that the soap work, that'll show you where fulling mills are. That was an early piece of information we got. So we're going to put information onto the website, and that's will tell the story, and we've worked out all the sections. We've got a blog, so the community research volunteers can contribute information to the blog. We're going to put information onto the People's Collection, and we're going to translate the main parts of the story, but then also provide the additional information, whether it came in Welsh or whether it came in English. We have so much information, we can't possibly translate it all. So that's what we're hoping to do.
The Sheep to Sugar project has ensured that more people than ever have found out about the connections between Welsh wool and slavery. And through their work, they are encouraging others to find out more about this painful but fascinating story.
Right, well, I now can stop sharing and come back to all of you. So, wow, that was quite an epic, and we're very, very grateful to all the people who were involved in producing the film for us. It was quite an effort, but well worthwhile in the end. Okay, so I think now it would be good perhaps to give some of my colleagues who were involved in the project an opportunity to talk. So we've got Caroline, and we've also got Jill. You saw Jill's work, and that beautiful piece of cloth. It was just fantastic. Jill actually undertook this amazing task of producing the cloth from the fleece, and Jill's story about how it got fulled was priceless, I thought. So Jill, are you there? Are you able to talk to us?
Yes, I am. Can you hear me?
Yes, thank you.
Right. Sorry, I had a phone call in the middle of that, so I had to do a little bit of fiddling around. And I'm also waiting for somebody to come and collect some yarn that I've spun.
Oh, right.
So quite busy, yes. So
Jill, you are a spinner and a weaver, and you actually got yourself a fleece, the nearest you could to the...
yeah, that's right, yes. A Clun Forest.
Clun Forest, right?
Yeah.
And then you went through all the processes, the carding.
Yeah.
Making the roll
washing first, then carding, then spinning, then weaving. Yes.
Then weaving, which took a long time, I know. And then once the cloth was produced, you then had to full it, which was the process that
yes
took place. So how did you full it?
Well, I I actually did it in the bath in the end. Because you need the water and you need the pounding.
Yeah.
So it was quite fun, yeah.
Yeah. So you went through all that process, and then we had the final event. You were able to bring that to share with us at the University of South Wales when we spoke.
That's right.
About it. Caroline, I think you've actually got the fabric with you. We've got a great collection, and here's the actual piece of fabric. You can see
my
it's
bit, yes.
scale there more than on the film. I think they filmed it very well. So one of the things that would have been wonderful would have been to actually find an example of the fabric. Caroline, where do you think there might be an example?
Well, there's a museum in the southern states of America that has a sample of plains in a fabric sample book from the late 1700s. And I did contact them to ask if they could identify it, because the collection is searchable. You can look at the sample book, but presumably the names that are handwritten are behind the samples. You can't see exactly which one is the one that is Plains. But it's, you know, it's an English sample book, so it probably is Welsh Plains. But there are a lot, you know, hundreds of samples of different fabrics in this little book in their collection.
So we engaged over 50 community research volunteers who are living around and about Wales, and we were able to visit all sorts of shows and talk about the story. As we explain in the film, the story was already known, and it's articulated quite clearly in Professor Chris Evans's book Slave Wales. So we were, first of all, we had to tell the story and then encourage people to find out more, either about the practical processes, which we've described as Jill's being involved with, and that was really wonderful. And we went to a number of guilds of spinners, weavers and dyers to talk about the project, talk about the story, and to learn about the techniques that we used. We also went to the Newtown Textile Museum, to the National Wool Museum, and to the I can't remember the name of the mill, Caroline, in North Wales near Conwy. But we went to a number of places, and Chris Evans gave us 10 days of his time, 10 days of his time, which was wonderful because he came with us to the different locations where Welsh Plains had been produced. And there's a fantastic book he relied on very heavily, which is called look at it with all its bits sticking out. These are all the interesting pages, hundreds of them. The Welsh Woolen Industry by J. Geraint Jenkins, and also a very interesting book that we found by Aiken, which tells the story of it. But we've managed to get a transcript of the chapter that describes all of this, because it was the travellers in Wales at the time who explained about the processes and what was going on in the communities, and they were also just matter-of-factly mentioning that the cloth was used for the slave trade. And it's that almost casualness. This was just a part of life, this production. So it's really not a film, not a story to enjoy, not a film to enjoy. It's a difficult story, but it recognises not only the inequity of the transatlantic slave trade, but also the challenges of the poor weaving families in Wales. So, you know, thanks to everybody who was involved. So, Kay, I don't know if you want to comment at all. If you're involved, you're a member of the Spinners, Weavers and Dyers. I can't see whether people are around. All right, okay, just having lunch, Kay. This is a lunchtime conversation. This is what it's all about.
I'm just eating my soup. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can, Kay.
What did you want me to ask? What was the question?
Well, it was, would you like to tell us anything else about your involvement in the project?
Well, I didn't really do a lot, except I did read Chris Evans's book, which was very interesting. And I have learned to spin and weave, or not to weave, to spin, since I've been in Wales. And I am just, you know, gobsmacked at the amount of cloth that was produced. Yeah. Because I know how long it takes to process a fleece. I've had several fleeces. I've washed them and I've carded them using a machine carding process, and I've spun them, and it's so time consuming. And you know how these families manage to do that alongside, you know, growing food for themselves, looking after their children, all the other tasks in life. You know, it's hard to imagine, really. Yeah. And even the amount of sheep, you know, how the fleeces were got to the people, and you know how the space it would have taken up, you know, the space in their houses to do the actual weaving when they were so poor. The practicalities of it really amaze me, is what I'm trying to say.
I think one of the things that Professor Chris Evans was surprised by or fascinated by was the practicality of the production of the cloth. And when we came to the Newtown Textile Museum, which is fascinating and was the next step on from the cottage industry, producing the cloth at home, because the hand weaving then moved into a factory setting, which is where the one of the where the Newtown Textile Museum is actually in one of these, if you like, a weaving factory, is the size of the looms. We know exactly how wide the cloth was. We know exactly what lengths of cloth were produced for sale and costs, etc. But it's the size of the loom. So that was one of the things that was really a question to us, because it would have nearly taken up half the room. And the noise of the weaving, or whether it was done in outbuildings, but then it would have been extremely cold. And how was it transported? And some of us got quite obsessed with finding out more and more about pack horses. Yes, it was just a fascinating project. Naomi has joined us now from the University of South Wales, and you were working with Professor Chris Evans, weren't you, Naomi?
Yeah, sorry, I wasn't expecting to speak. It caught me caught me off guard there.
So Naomi helped to organise a wonderful conference. Do you want to just tell us a little bit about that, Naomi?
Oh, like I said, you caught me off guard, but yeah, I mean, it was mostly Chris, but we got together. It was an international conference. We had people from all over the place. Our keynote speakers came from America, Colleen Krieger and Seth Rockman, just talking about all just a different way. It was called The Clothing the Enslaved in the 18th century. So it was all different ways that places that made different cloths that clothed the enslaved, where it came from, just everything about it, really, everything we could. Sorry, it's gone out of my head, as I say, off guard, but no, it was really, really wonderful. But one of the best things about it was that it wasn't just academics speaking. We had sort of artists and obviously Liz here came to speak as well. So it was kind of lots of different perspectives about the subject. So yeah.
I think there were about 10 of us from the project that came over the 3-day period. So it really was great. Thank you so much, Naomi. I'm sorry to put you on the spot. Perhaps seems a bit of an unusual way of doing things. But Angharad, you came to the National Eisteddfod, where the project was presented in Welsh by Mervyn Thomas from Dolgellau. So Angharad, how did that inspire you to write the book?
I wanted to write about Penrhyn Castle and the links with slavery, but then I went to hear Chris Evans speaking in March, and this was a totally new perspective. I didn't know of the story at all, and actually I have relations who lived in Trawsfynydd in a fueling mill in the 1770s, so it's quite possible that my family was involved in this, but I thought it was so shocking. And I tried to imagine the life of a girl, a 15-year-old girl in a family like that. And when the trade goes down, she has no work. There was no work after emancipation. And then she went as a servant's maid to Penrhyn Castle. So I'm trying to imagine the lives of these women and a slave in Jamaica. That was the other end of the story. So it's these ordinary people whose lives is exploited in such a way just because of somebody who was working in the slave trade.
Yes, thank you so much, and thank you. You starred in our video, walking around the streets of Dolgellau at the Sailors Institute in Barmouth as well. Thank you very much for participating that day. It was very valuable. So really over to any of you if you want to ask any questions.
Liz, could I make a comment and ask a question? I'm David Alston, and I'm an historian. I live in the north of Scotland, and I only heard about Welsh Plains for the first time a little more than a month ago from Liz, and it's really opened my eyes to what seems to me to be a very important parallel between what happened in the north of Scotland and what happened in rural Wales. Because Liz mentioned the other cloth which was being exported, the Osnaburgs, sometimes just called slave cloth, which was one of Scotland's principal exports. What happened in the Highlands from the middle of the 1700s was that what was encouraged was the spinning of linen yarn that was then going to be used to make slave cloth. And that had a profound influence on the life of people, particularly the life of women in rural areas of the north of Scotland. The big difference, I would say, is that this is not using a local material. The flax which was used was being imported from the Baltic, mainly from St. Petersburg and Riga. But it was still worthwhile bringing that to the Highlands of Scotland because the labour was cheaper. And then that yarn was being taken further south in Scotland to be woven into slave cloth and then exported to the Caribbean and I think later to North America. So I think there's a very interesting parallel there that I'm enthusiastic about trying to explore. I've got a question. One of the big differences it made in the Highlands is that this is the point at which spinning wheels are introduced. And spinning wheels were, at least for the Highlands at that point, new technology. Before that point, women were spinning with distaffs. And the big difference seems to be that spinning with a distaff, you could do other things. You could walk about, you weren't tied to the house, tied to a particular room. When you start spinning with a spinning wheel, and it's long work, women are then much more tied to the house, and not everybody wanted to do that. It was a very big social change. I wondered if this was happening in rural Wales as well. Was it the production of Welsh Plains that brought spinning wheels into local houses, and did that amount of spinning make a big difference to the lives of women?
A really interesting question. So I'm going to see either if Maya or Jill or even Kay, if you've got your practical spinners and weavers, have you got any thoughts on that? If not, the answer is I'm not quite sure, but it's a good question and we'll find out about it. And that's a very good point.
Maya here from the Textile Industry Museum. Yeah. I don't know how much changed the role of women, but definitely the whole family was involved in the production of Welsh flannel in Newtown. And once you got the kind of mechanization from about the 1820s, you saw kind of the factory system kind of being brought in rather than the home spinning. I mean, kind of, you saw a massive increase in the population. The population of Newtown doubled in, I think, about 25 years. And was comparable then, you know, it was known as the Leeds of Wales, kind of in terms of its kind of production of Welsh flannel. So I think there was a massive social change, just in terms of different classes kind of coming in and a massive kind of working class, but definitely the role of women in working kind of much more within the home was very pronounced.
Right, that's a very good point.
I was just going to make a point, Liz. That some of the early tourists who described the rural scenes as they were going through Wales talked about the women sitting in their cottage doorways spinning. Yeah. So a group of them would probably get together. So it was quite a social thing as well. So they weren't just isolated. There would be groups of them sitting at the doorways talking and spinning. And that was quite a common scene. There's lots of paintings.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Jill here. I would agree with that spinning is a very social thing. I mean, I belong to spinning groups, And I'm quite sure that they couldn't have produced the amount of yarn that was needed by the weavers unless they'd had spinning wheels, even if they were the primitive walking wheels.
Yes, it's the one thing was the volume, the sheer volume of fleece that would have been spun, and then the amount of cloth that was woven was enormous. So lots more things to explore though, and I think we can take that one forward because we're now setting up on the second Saturday morning of the month. We're setting up the Breath In online research network, and we'll spend an hour or so discussing. We had a pilot session Saturdays ago, and we talked with two of our community research volunteers who are based in Shrewsbury, and they were catching us up with what they were doing. We also want to follow up the story in Glencerrig, as well as in Engolgethra and McCuntloch. So there's lots more to do, and I think in these strange times, now we've found Zoom, or Zoom's found us, then there's so much possibility to discuss things together and to share expertise and to understand the stories better.
Liz,
So
could I ask a quick question? May I ask a question as somebody who's completely ignorant about spinning, textiles, etc. What was it about the Welsh plains? What was it about the fabric itself, the textile itself, that made it the fabric of choice in this horrible trade? Well, you know, was it to do with price or to do with characteristics of the cloth itself, or what?
I think it was partly both. It was the price. It was a cheap cloth. It was exported through, first of all, Shrewsbury, then through Bristol, then through Liverpool. But it was also seems to have qualities, possibly due to its strength because of the particular fleeces that were used for the warp, not necessarily the weft, but the warp that made it so strong. We're going to continue conversations after 12:30. So if there are more questions you want to ask then, that's fine. But now we're just going to ask if that's okay. Thank you very much to everybody who's contributed. And thank you for those of you who came along, perhaps especially to see hear this presentation. But we're now going to invite Michaela Jean Samuel to share with us perhaps a couple more of your incredible paintings. Michaela's joined us for several weeks. It's lovely, I can hear you, and this is great. So over to you. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much, Liz. I hope everyone is here. Is everyone hearing me?
Yeah.
Thank you.
All right, okay. I'm happy to once more again to share a few of my paintings with all of us. It's been a wonderful experience to be through all of this together. I've learned a lot of my own history and my work. I am called Jean Samuel Fikela Jean Samuel, and I am an African contemporary painter. I live in Bangor, Gwynedd in North Wales. So through these meetings, I've been showing my paintings and explaining little about them, because we are always like having limited time. This painting that you see is a copy of one of the paintings I have shown before. The painting is called Unzipping the African Potential. The woman inside who is pregnant tells us about the many resources of Africa, the fact that they have a youthful population that can be transformed into a great labor force. We expect that there will be somebody. This could be a great leader. It could be a great visionary. It could be a great young man to unzip this potential. You can see the hand trying to put down the zip. But unfortunately, if you look at the hand, even though it has a peace plan showing that it has there are some leaves all around the hand. In my culture, these leaves symbolize peace. when someone is coming, when you see a messenger with the leaves around the hand or around the neck, the information, the visual information telling you that they are out for peace. Even if there was a warring situation, both parties have to halt and listen to the message from this guy. But you can see that the hand is there are some thorns in the hand or some small spears in that hand unzipping. These spears are people who often attack those who want to help Africa genuinely. For 50 years now, Africa, after independence, have been having unnecessary problems. I don't understand why they had independence. Up till now, they cannot even feed their people, or they don't even have the necessary, not to talk about the necessary technological growth and, technological progress that the whole world is experiencing now. So I have realized that whenever a leader stands up to do something genuinely for Africa, there are always some people who fight that leader. Those are the spears that are piercing the hand of that are piercing the hand unzipping. And unfortunately, sometimes these spears come from Africans themselves. Yeah, I've seen Africans fighting people who want to help them prosper and progress. They are so used to that position in life where they always expect that something wonderful for their continent will be done by someone else from somewhere else. And that theory has never worked, and it might never work. So in summary, this spending is to remind Africans to take responsibility, to unveil their future, to make sure that that woman delivers. The woman is the future of Africa, which will make Africa a force to reckon with in the world. Thank you.
Very much. That's just such an incredible painting.
Yeah. Well, okay. Well, I told you, in the last conversation, I expressed to you that one of the most significant aspects of my culture is the African mask. And that the African mask is not only an item for entertainment or decoration, but it's also something that embodies the spirit of the African ancestors. In almost all of my paintings, you shall always see the African mask, because when I look at them, I remember my great-great-grandfather. I remember all they did for us, all they suffered for us, all they told us. And in my community, we feel that our ancestors do not die. Even when they leave you physically, we have the impression that they are still watching you somehow from above. And when you really believe in these things, they tend to manifest in your life. So this painting, I'm simply sharing my ancestors with the rest of the world and telling them that we should have more respect for the African mask, because a lot of people just look at it as a means of decoration. No, it is not true. It embodies the spirit of the African ancestors, and there is always a spiritual link between it or in it. Thank you. These are two abstract paintings, but they are two in one. The title of this painting is Chaos. Chaos. I was inspired recently to do this painting when I saw what is happening, for example, in Nigeria now, the anti-SARS protest. And I saw how peaceful protesters, especially young people, have just been shut down just because they want their voices to be heard, or because they think that their government should be more or less like the car, while the people should be the driver. That is supposed to be a democracy. But democracy in Africa often tends to be something else. It's like some sort of disguised dictatorship. Otherwise, I don't understand how peaceful young people would go out to protest, and the government would prefer to kill them so that they should not say what is true. Freedom of speech was what we expected that every democratic country today should try to promote or propagate. So this painting is called Chaos. It's going to remind me and other people of the sad days that Nigerian young people are passing through now, just because they are standing up for what is right. We know that the power of a democracy belongs in the capacity and the ability to protest far right. But these children have not been given that right, or that basic human right, to suggest to the government who they want to be. All right, thank you. Well, always, I always try to show an animal or some animals. The last ones were abstract pictures of animals, but this one is it's close to a realistic painting of the African elephant. The African elephant happens to be the biggest land mammal. The biggest land mammal. I think it should be in the world, because the African elephant is far bigger than the Asian elephant. So, and this is the male, the bull. So it was just to remind ourselves that we Africans are still very much, we are still conserving our woods and our wildlife, and we still remember them wherever we are. When I'm back home, I see a lot of elephants. Some of them even, I think I even know some personally, or they know me back. So it's nice to show their pictures with everyone in the world. Thank you. All right. This painting is a sort of mystical musician. He's playing a traditional music instrument called the kora. Kora, like the bottom is a calabash, but it has some strings. It gives a particular sound, which is very typical. You can get it in Malian music, in Senegalese music, some places in Nigeria, and also in Cameroon. So the title is The Kora Player. But I decided to make it look a bit like so energetic and a bit metaphysical to blend with the environment as it is. So, well, part of it was just to dramatize it as an artist, but it's just the kora player. Thank you.
Thanks very much indeed. That's absolutely brilliant. Thank you. Thank you, Bikela, Jean, Samuel.
You're welcome. Thank you.
The last
Please.
4 sessions, you've shared some of your fabulous work. I know that you can see those some of those paintings, I don't think all of them, on the Race Council Cymru Black History Month website.
Yeah, some of them are there.
People want to look in more detail. Obviously, exhibiting for you is an issue at the moment, but I know that you do exhibit at the Bangor Arts Initiative, and that's for me has been fantastic in past years to be able to go along and have a look at your paintings. So thank you so much, and we look forward to welcoming you, and perhaps in November we'll arrange one of the sessions so that you can have a longer slot and tell us a bit more about yourself and your journey as an artist, and how come it is you're now based in Bangor. Oh, thank you very much indeed. That's great.
Well, yes, I'm looking forward to that, Liz. I'm looking forward to the opportunity to be able to express more. Always, I feel that I'm charged for time, but I understand. Hopefully I'll have more time sometime. Thank you.
Well, we set off with these conversations not quite knowing how it was going to unfold.
Yeah.
Say that I'm delighted to be able to see that Yasser Safari has joined us now, which is great. Welcome to you. Greetings, Yasser, from Jamaica. Really, really good. Good to see you. So, but before Yasser, we ask you to talk about why it is that we're working with artists and poets and other creative people when we're talking about understanding the stories of Black history. So that's what Yasser is going to talk about. But before that, Gwyneth, you're still with us, and Norbert, yes, Norbert's here. So Gwyneth, where are we at with unpacking your story? And Helen's here as well, I think. The story of Henry Morton Stanley.
Yes, and I think Martin could contribute. I don't know if Martin explained that he had been very active with the Black Congolese in Merseyside.
Right, okay. Martin, are you?
Yes, I can just chip in. I mean, I'm not a historical expert. I'm more interested in promoting community cohesion, educating young people in the context of the modern world, and Black History Month and stuff like that. And I live in the most diverse borough in the UK, possibly the world, because Newham is 84% minority ethnic. So there's only 16%, 16% that are white British or near that. So I'm not the best person to talk about history, but in terms of the context of the Congolese, I was working in Liverpool with Congolese refugees because Liverpool has one of the regional home offices in the UK where refugees have to be administered from. and we had a lot of Congolese in Liverpool that were marginalized by local racism and ignorance, and also their own lack of a full education, because Congo, with the Belgian administrators, was never one of the stronger colonies in terms of development. So I got involved with Dembi because I wanted to tell the Congolese links with the UK so that they could link their own heritage with what was happening here. So the Elder Dempster line, which was a shipping line, was administering all the ships going to Congo that took manufactured products to Congo and then brought back rubber and ivory and things like that. But that was misused by King Leopold II of Belgium, who was exporting troops to Congo to run slaves, and arguably may have been the origin of 8 million people being killed in the Congo as part of that terrible exploitation. So that was how I got involved. My motivation is more to help to educate young people generally about our history and link it to our modern life, because, for instance, Henry Morton Stanley is considered as a very controversial character by many, because people associate him with colonialism and exploitation. But in fact, without going into the detail, he had a remarkable personal history. He was an illegitimate orphan, very much rejected by his family, and lived a remarkable life. And he wasn't in favor of King Leopold's exploitation of Congo as it took place. So that is my motivation, and also to bring people together so that Henry Morton Stanley doesn't end up being a controversial character. He just becomes part of a big picture, which is fascinating, and we can link to the modern world. So that's my perspective.
Thank you very much indeed. And I think the controversy is one of the reasons that this is a fascinating story, and we're keeping it rolling on week after week as more people are joining in the conversation.
Hello.
Helen, sorry, Norbert?
Yeah.
Where
Yeah,
are you now, Norbert?
Sorry,
You still in Paris?
yeah, no, I'm back home. I want just to add my voice to what have been said. And I think we are living in a very, very interesting time, where really we have opportunity not only to review the history, but there will be a big mistake if we are not giving voice to Black people to make also had their part of this history. And this is the big mistake where we are going now. And also, I'm nothing against the Black Lives Matters, but the big mistake of the Black Lives Matter could be to listen the part of the story of African people who cross the Atlantic. But it's important to listen also those who remain in Africa. I think the book of Professor Olivier Totele is very, very interesting to question about the slave trade story, the slave trade story from people who remain in Africa. And it's interesting, so that it will give us a kind of a good picture. And about the Henry Morton Stanley story, it's important to remember. Most of the people, I try, and I've been many times in Denby, requesting for an academic conference with people who are against, but no one. And most of them, their main book is the book of Adam Orchard. This is the French version. But this is not the best book about the Congolese history. about Henry Morton Stanley history, this is the last best book written by Tim Gill, because he's the only biographer who really had access to archive. None of the biographers have access before. And I just finished myself. I came back from Paris because I present my book about Patrice Lumumba. So there I try to also to tell the part of the story of Henry Morton Stanley, what you can find in this last book about the Congolese history. Is this book, I think we got it in most of our library, because what is interesting in this book of David Van Riebeeck, a friend of mine, is a Belgian, is the Henry Morton Stanley is the first chapter of this book is about the opposite Henry Morton Stanley of the one quoted by Adam Ochai, because I was surprising when I check in my books, I found this cartoon. This is the cartoon we read in Congo since we were young about the assassin. And the book of David Van Riebeeck start with this story of Disassi, because Disassi was one of the enslaved boy by Henry Morton Stanley, and the author David Van Riebeeck met with the son of Disassi. But when he wrote his book, he never read this cartoon. So that gave us a kind of picture that what was in this cartoon is really the reality. So to connect Henry Morton Stanley with the what King Leopold II did in Congo is also is really is a kind of part of a long story, because this is the latest book in France about people who were involved in King Leopold II atrocity in Congo. So, and you will not find a remote Stanley name inside. So, and as I said, we got the first time that we got the report against King Leopold II was with the Liverpool Congo Reform Association by Edmond Morel. And we know that Roger Kessman was sent in Congo as the first British consul. So that is the first official report. So if those people who were contemporaries for Henry Morton Stanley, they found something wrong against Henry Morton Stanley, they will mention it. So it's just clear.
So Norbert, thank you so much. That's incredible. But that's giving me an idea, because to complement our Black History Lunchtime conversations, we're also starting up a Black History Book Club. And that's going to be on the third Saturday of every month from 10 till 12. And it would be great, Norbert, you mentioned at the beginning that you felt that there should be an academic conference and discussion. And we've got with us today Helen Papworth, who's written about Henry Morgan Stanley's wife. And that's a fascinating story. I've only read a little tups off the Amazon page, but I can't wait to get into it more. So maybe we could bring you all together to discuss more about that. And Simon, we could perhaps link in with you as well.
Yes, probably could.
Okay, that could be really, really interesting.
And sorry, can I just make a point as well that one of the well, a number of books that are well worth reading. Sorry.
There are a number of books.
A number of books well worth reading are the Stanley's own, his last series of books in the Darkest Africa. If you read that, you get a very, very different picture.
And we will also invite Professor Sati from Jos University in Nigeria, because he's actually using some of those materials in his lecturing. And as Norbert says, it's really important that we have colleagues with African heritage who are telling their stories. So important. So if it's okay with you, and Gwyneth, I can see your finger up, but if you wrap this bit up, and then we're going to let Yasser have the last 10 minutes of our session. Gwyneth, are you okay?
And we could, right?
Yes.
Can you hear? Yep.
Yeah, can you just wrap up then, Gwyneth?
Yes, but I would just like to ask Norbert, when I have mentioned to those against Stanley that there are people like Norbert and others, and the answer I get is, oh, but they're the result of their colonial education and imperialism. This is coming from white people, mainly. That's perhaps something we can discuss later on in one of the sessions, yes?
I think so. And I think maybe when we've had a discussion about the books as well, we can dedicate a whole of one of these sessions to this story, because it's really becoming a fascination to many, that by bringing different people together, we're able to tell, explore the story more. And it's certainly a fascination to me. So thank you to all of you who've contributed there. That's wonderful. And as I said, just
if I can just add, there is an African saying, a proverb from my mother tongue that says, if someone has been bitten by the snake, he will be afraid even by seeing the simple lizard. He will jump when he sees the lizard. You have this impression that the people, they try to portray everything to say, oh, this is really the imperialism. This is the colonial teaching. No, as I said, and I mentioned to people many, many times, I said, look, I wrote a book about Patrice Lumumba, and Patrice Lumumba is one of the first anti-colonial African assassinated by the CIA. So I'm a Lumumbist. So someone who is writing a book about Lumumba, you can't say everything apart to say that he's an imperialist. So, but we need to say the story, the truth is the truth. And we need to take the sources. We put just the source and then we question. But when you say to them, have you read this? Have you read that? They say, no, we don't want to read. So why not? If you need to be open-minded to read everything, and then, So again, I think it's important for us to bring all those books in a book conference, so that people have opportunity to read and then to question themselves.
Thank you so much, Norbert. I think that's a lovely, lovely African saying as well, explains a lot. So thanks to you all. Thank you, Martin, Gwyneth, Helen and Norbert. That's been really moved us a step along again. And thanks you all for joining us. But in a moment, I'm going to introduce Yasser Safari. He's the director of the Jamaica Poetry Festival, very successful, which did its first online rendition this year. And he's been a long-time supporter and an activist in exploring and sharing Black history, particularly in Wales, but also in England. And we've worked together for over 10 years now. Now, after Yasser's presentation, we're going to share one of his video tracks, and that's going to be Black Magic. This was filmed at Brigham Rocks in Yorkshire a few years ago, so it's certainly a fascinating thing. So we try to bring a bit of a mix. Then we'll switch off record, and then we'll carry on the conversation. So now it's over to you, Yasser Safari, and you're going to talk to us about, well, you'll explain to us what you're going to talk to us about. Thanks ever so much, Yasser, and welcome for coming again to join us.
You're most welcome, Liz, and thank you as well. And good morning to you, everyone here. Are you hearing me?
Yes, thank you.
Right. Happy to be linking from Jamaica. We have been having thunderstorms for several days now, so heavy rains and wind, but it's all good. And happy to join. I'll be speaking specifically related to the role of poets, authors, and other creative people in the notion of Black history and the history of humanity, because Black history, African history, speaks to the history of the human experience and the human journey. Context determines content, and so I give a bit of context. We want to look at human spirituality as a context. And looking at human spirituality, we could see spirituality or human spirituality as that original authentic network that connects us to each other, to the universe, and to the source of our existence. So spirituality is that unifying force of energy which connects us all. Now, in terms of poetry and the arts, I think that arts, poetry specifically, is really the language of the soul and the currency of the human mind. And so that faculty to reason, to talk as social beings was uploaded in poetic memory codes and artistic memory codes. And so I would like to look at the arts, poetry specifically, and the entire spectrum of the arts as being retentive memory of those embedded codes that speaks to our faculty as human beings to reason rationally, to think, to create, to immortalize our energy. And so within the African journey and looking at the African art, specifically fascinated by Jean Samuel's work over the years, as well as art in Africa generally, which epitomizes the very concept of what I'm trying to talk about, how the artists, all the arts, tell the story of the human experience and the human journey. And not just to tell the story, but to create a narrative and to challenge the established notions and to create a new paradigm so that we can always reinvent ourselves and meet the challenges that face us. And so we want to look at the fact that human beings were elevated above the level of the jungle and the animals. And so the human being would not have to, eat your brother when you're hungry, referencing Bob Marley's lyrics, so that when you're hungry, your brother don't have to be your enemy. We can elevate ourselves above the jungle justice, the jungle ways of doing things, the jungle way of elevating yourself at the expense of your neighbor, at the expense of the weak and the vulnerable. And so we want to think that art facilitates this cohesion. Someone referenced social cohesion earlier. So art essentially speaks to the human spirituality, which is to bond us all to each other, to our past, our present, our future, and to the source of our existence. And so essentially, the arts really aspire to harmonize and compose and create that balance and that harmony so that we can attain and sustain the peace and tranquility that is vital to our human existence and coexistence. And so the role of the art and artists and the arts, especially in the context of Black history and world history, is critical and crucial, especially in these challenging times when we are at the crossroads of time and going through a global reset that is symbolically represented by the experiences that we're having in the COVID pandemic. And so it is amply demonstrated week in, week out with Jean's work, my work as well, and the arts and the poets and the writers and the musicians. And linking back to the context and the synergy, we want to reference, for example, the sheep wool project that we had demonstrated at the University of South Wales, where the human spirit, since we're talking human spirituality, was originally clothed in the human form and the human flesh. And we could reference even the Christian teaching from St. John 1, in the beginning was the Word was God, with God and took on flesh and dwelt among man. It is symbolic in my mind, therefore, looking at the Welsh plains and the cloth that was used to clothe the enslaved people as being symbolic and representative of that clothing of the human spirit. And so the human was dispossessed due to the and unclothed in the transatlantic genocide, whereby they were essentially almost naked. They used to work naked. And so this cloth was used to clothe them. Interestingly, Bob Marley's father is connected at least close to Wales, Swansea, possibly Wales area. And Bob Marley is another symbolic person, a poet and musician and artist who actually helped to clothe the people's mentality with this notion of one love, with this notion of getting together and feel all right, the social cohesion, this being interconnectivity between human beings who are elevated above the jungle mentality. And so we would like to close in the interest of time by saying the arts crucial is important and need to be celebrated and heralded and showcased so that it can challenge the narrative, challenge the paradigm. It can bring healing, social cohesion, and find a way that human beings can peacefully coexist through the mechanism of social justice, that we can sustain peace and love and tranquility, and we can live together as human beings, equal in the face of our history and our reality, and that we can work together to sustain our existence on the planet Earth. And so that is the importance of the arts, to breed new thoughts, new values, new perspective, new hope into the family of humanity. Give thanks.
Thank you very much indeed, Yasser. That was very profound. Thank you, thank you. And we're just going to move on right away now to hear one of your tracks, Black Magic. Is that all right, Simon?
Yep, I'm just going to share my screen again and show that. And thank you, Yasser, that was great.
Lovely.
Thank you.
And then after that, if people have got questions for Yasser, then I'm sure he'll be only too willing to talk with you.
Here we go.
Thank you then, yes, lovely.
Forget the rest we had. I never thought I'd ever wanted to express myself so much that it hurt inside. Keep moving, keep your head held high. I'ma walk with pride and I laugh. That's right, I seen another day the way the mighty warriors rise. Nights I cry till my eyes half blind, but I'ma fight this fight till the day I die.
You know that I'm black and they have the magic. So the people them a call me Ras Black Magic. Ras Black, ooh, Ras Black Magic. You know that I'm black and they have the magic. So the people them a call me Ras Black Magic. I'll kiss your memories in ecstasy as they detoxify my body of stress and strain, heartaches and pain. I caress your thoughts trembling, and as we caress, minds intertwined naked, making love in the rain of ecstasy. You know that I'm black and they have the magic. So the people them a call me Rasta magic. You know that I'm black and me have the magic. So the people them a call me Rasta magic. Rasta. You know that I'm black and me have the magic. So the people them a call me Rasta magic. You know that I'm black and me have the magic. So the people them a call me Rasta magic. Rasta, Rasta magic. Visualize, mentalize, materialize. Open up your ears with the vocal eyes. Then we dance and we walk and we close in the sky. Construct the ancient reality. I am black and me have the magic. So the people them a call me Rasta magic. You know that I'm black and me have the magic. So the people them a call me Rasta magic. Rasta, Rasta magic. Because I am black and me have the magic. So the people them a call me Rasta magic. Rasta.
Wow, thanks very much indeed. Thank you. It's good to see that again. Yeah, Caroline says, brilliant, Yasser, great.
Thank you.
Okay, so we've had some lovely comments as well. Lovely comments. We'll say thank you to everyone and stop the recording now, please, Simon.
Yep.